Hello, welcome to the Champion Faction where I share my love of Stonemaier Games. I'm Jason Martin, and today I'm reviewing the newest game from Stonemaier, Expeditions. Now, as I've mentioned before, Scythe is my #1 game of all time. Scythe was published, I want to say 2015 or 16, maybe 17, I don't remember exactly. So it's been about 6 or 7 years, somewhere in there. And now we have, a couple of years ago, Jamie Stegmaier said that they weren't producing any new content for Scythe. They had come out with a number of expansions. There was a modular board. There were upgraded components. They had metal mechs for Scythe and a few other things. But they weren't going to create any more content. So they completed the completed rule book, which has all the rules and FAQs and everything for Scythe, and Scythe is done. I think that's good. I think that's a good thing. I don't think a game needs to continuously be expanded or evolved. However, I loved this world. This theme is really interesting. It's really, I find it very engaging. The artwork is beautiful, but more than that, it's just a fun alternate history to play in a game. And so when I heard that Expeditions was coming out, I was really excited, and I was glad to return to this world. I was excited to see what Jamie would do with the design, centered again in this world, knowing that it would be compared to Scythe by a lot of people, and so needing to make it differentiated but still evoke similar feelings. And so I'm here to talk a little bit about the game. I'll tell you whether or not I think that occurred, whether or not it does evoke some of those feelings. But first, I'll show you a little bit about how to play. Welcome back to the 1920 plus world of Scythe that is now the world of Expeditions. In Expeditions, we are going to move our character or our mech around the board, exploring different tiles, vanquishing corruption, collecting cards which contain items that will upgrade our mech, as well as meteorites that will be able to be melded to our mech, and completing quests that will give us other abilities. Now, I have the solo game set up here, and so I'm going to explain a little bit about how to play the solo game. But the multiplayer game is similar in that the human players' turns play exactly the same as the multiplayer game. So the human player on their turn will move this cube right here. It starts out on the refresh space, and on the first turn of the game, and then every turn thereafter after a refresh, you move it to this space that allows the player to then take all 3 actions: move, play, and gather. In move, you just take your mech and you move it to another hex that is between 1 and 3 spaces away. Now there is a special mech ability for one of the asymmetrical mech mats that allows that player to move 4 times. But as a default, you can move 1 to 3 spaces away. So you start out at the base camp, but then you don't come back to the base camp, and you'll just go to any one of these spaces. Playing means playing one of your cards. You start out with 2 cards. One is a character, and then the animal companion. The character and the companion always go together. You always play those together. You can play these, each character and companion, with any of the mechs and their corresponding mech. So you're going to start out with your mech, the associated mech mat, and then the character and companion. And when you play a card, you will play it to the right side of your mech mat, and you're going to lay them out in order, because sometimes it has to do, there are important differentiations with some cards regarding what cards they're next to. You play the card and you get what's called the core value. That's either going to be guile or strength, or in this case, you get 1 guile, and then if you've placed 1 glory token, you also get a strength. 2 glory tokens, you get 2 strength. Optionally, you can also place a worker of a certain color to gain an ability. Now, the character and the companion have some different abilities. Characters allow you to solve quests, so you have to be able to play this card or another card that has a solve ability with the associated colored worker, and that lets you solve quests. I'll explain that in a minute. The character allows you to vanquish corruption, which I'll also explain in a little bit, but you have to have the certain color worker. You play the card, you get the core value, and if you want to do that, you place that worker to vanquish. Now, they also have or ability, so like for instance, Gunter, if you place a red worker here, it immediately gets you a green worker, which, hey, that helps because Noct requires a green worker. So a lot of times early in the game, what you might end up doing is going for the one of the worker spots, which you'll see there are 2 worker spots in the opening area, the what's called the southern section of the board, that give you workers. But then this section right here, this is a gather ability. I probably ought to explain gather now as well. Gather just means you take the ability of whatever tile you're on. So right now, my character or my mech is on a tile that gives either 1 green or 1 worker. This gather ability gives 1 blue or 1 yellow worker. This gather ability just means that you can take any of the face-up cards, and you'll see that there are 5 cards face-up on the board. You can think of this as like a typical card market in, say, a deck building game or something like that. The difference is that they are arrayed as part of the board because sometimes you might be in an area where it references adjacent cards. So for instance, right here, there's only 1 adjacent card, this one here. But if I was in this space, there would be 3 adjacent cards, this, and that. And so occasionally you might encounter things that reference adjacent cards, and so that's what that means. So on my first turn, I'm going to move, play, and gather. Move 1 to 3, play a card, getting the core value, and if I place a worker, the ability down here. And gather just means I take the ability of whatever tile I'm on. You can do those in any order. So if I start my turn here and I want to move and gather, I can gather here and then move, or I can move and gather where I end up. Now, you'll also notice that the southern area of the board is exposed, and I can see what those tiles are. The central and northern areas have not been exposed yet. And so that's where I'm going to have to explore. And you simply explore by moving on to those spaces. You can't move through this, except there is a card that has a special ability. It does let you move through spaces that have not been revealed yet. But by default, you move onto a space, you take the token. This is called a map token. You keep that on your mech mat, and then you flip over the tile to see what it is. Now, if you were to gather, you can gather that ability, but before you do that, you have to place corruption. Right here is usually some kind of ability that that you're going to want to do. It might be melding a mech, it might be the ability to upgrade an item, or it might be an ability to boast, which I'll get to boasting in a little bit. But there has to be placed a certain number of corruption. Now, you probably can't see on the camera, but right there it says 5+. That means I have to draw out of this bag corruption tokens 1 at a time that equal or exceed 5. So if I reach in, I grab 1, and this is 3. So I still need to keep drawing. So I put that 3 down there. That's a 3 guile corruption because it's that turquoise color. And this one is a 5. So even though I only needed to draw 5 or more, I ended up drawing 8. That's not great. Or it could be good if you're really wanting to get some high value corruption tokens, which there are reasons why you might want to do that. But this space underneath is not available until this corruption has been vanquished. And remember, I said that to vanquish, you need a card that has a vanquish action on it, and your starting companion will have one, and you have to play that with the associated color worker. But then you have to spend the amount of strength right there, and guile right here, and the amount of the corruption token there. You have to start with the top one and work your way down. So before I can take care of that 3 guile corruption, I have to first take care of the 5 strength. In order to do that, I would have to have at least 5 strength and then 3 guile to get that one. Obviously, starting the game, I don't, but hopefully by the time I've gotten there, I've been able to do that. So those are the basic plays. So I mentioned that the first play of the game, I'm going to move it here and take all 3. Move, play, and gather. After that, I have to move my cube onto one of these 3 spaces. And when I do that, I take the 2 exposed actions. So I don't take the one that my cube is on, but I take the other 2. So on my first turn, I'm doing move, play, gather. And then my second turn, maybe I do move and gather. And so I'll move again, I'll gather again, but I haven't played any cards. And I keep doing that and keep doing that until I get to the point where I can't play any more cards. And that's when I take a refresh. And refresh basically means all of my cards, presumably, or all or most, are here on the right side of my mech mat. And what that means is I just take these cards and put them back into my hand, which in this game, you could, I suppose, play closed-handed like a lot of games do, but there really isn't much benefit to that. So it's okay to keep your hand open on the left side of the mech. In fact, I think that's what the rule book kind of instructs you to do. So that's your turn. I'll explain the automa in a second, but for the most part, that's what you're doing in a multiplayer game. That's what you're doing in the solo game. You're moving, you're playing cards, you're gathering. You want to get more cards because, I should mention upgrading. So one of the tile, or a few of the tiles, have the ability to upgrade an item. So this is an item card indicated by the gear icon up here. And when you upgrade, what you basically do is tuck it under the right side of your mech mat. And then you're going to have this ability down at the bottom. That'll be an ongoing ability. So this one says, when you move, you may move through, this is the one I was referencing earlier. When you move, you may move through face down locations without stopping. So you'll be able to do that the rest of the game. And then at the end of the game, this will be worth 4 coins, which coins in this game are victory points. So this is an upgraded card. It stays there after it's upgraded the rest of the game. It's not considered under your control anymore. So anything that references cards under your control do not count upgraded items, melded meteorites, or solved quests. So let's talk about quests. Each quest card is indicated by this heart icon on the top and has a number right below it, as well as indicating what section it's going to be in. So this is location 13 in the central area. So it'll be somewhere in this middle part. And in order to solve this quest, I have to go to location 13, which is in the central area. I have to play a card with a solve action, which my character card, all the character cards have that as a possibility of solve action. And then I have to place the red worker or whatever color worker is required on that character. And that lets me solve this if I'm at location 13. And I don't know if you can see the little icons that show what I have to spend in order to do that. So in this case, I have to spend 2 strength. And then it lets me take an adjacent card. Remember, I mentioned earlier, there are things having to do with adjacency here. So wherever my mech is, let's say that this was location 13. And so I went there, I solved, I paid my strength, and this lets me then take an adjacent card. So I could take this card here, and whenever you take a card, unless specified otherwise, you're going to put that to the right as if you had already played it. You don't get any benefit when you take it, typically, but you will. It's then part of cards you control, and the next time you refresh, it'll come back into your hand. And so that's solving quests. Now, what solving quests do is, first of all, like I mentioned, it gives you a bonus whenever you solve the quest. You tuck it under the top part of your mat, and then at the end of the game, these serve as a multiplier for your glory tokens that you've placed on this board here. And so when you start out, if you haven't, or by the end of the game, if you haven't solved any quests, each glory token is only worth 5 coins or 5 points. If you've solved 1 quest, it's 6. 2 quests is 8, and 3 or 4 quests, or 5, because there's one faction ability that lets you do up to 5, those are worth 10 each. So upgrade or solving quests is a really important part of the game, I believe. I find that it's important to at least get 2 quests solved, and preferably 3 or more, in order to get that multiplier up a bit. Okay, so that's solving quests, talked about upgrading items. The other, and I don't have a meteorite card out here. Let's see if I can find one real quick. Oh, here's one. Okay, so meteorite cards have the little meteorite symbol there in the corner. And again, they play similarly to the other cards. So they have their core value. If you already have melded a meteorite, you get additional core value. And then when you place a worker, again, there's more bonus or benefit that it'll give you. If you've melded a few meteorites, it might be an even greater benefit. And so let's talk about melding meteorites. Well, this tile right here, you may not be able to see it very well, but that's a melding symbol. And so as a gather action, when you're here, after this corruption has already been vanquished and taken off the board, you can take a meld action. What this means is that you turn the card sideways and you slide it underneath well, you can't see on the screen, but you slide it underneath your mech mat so that only this bottom part is exposed. And the cool thing about this is that these bonuses here, first of all, they remain there the rest of the game, and you get coins based on the criteria here, and every time you meld a meteorite, all of the meteorites trigger. So this says gain $1 per adjacent face-up card. So right here, adjacent face-up cards would be 1, 2, 3. So I would get, slid off. So I would get 3 coins for melding this meteorite. Now, let's say I meld a second meteorite or a third. I get to do that again, a second and a third, and perhaps even a fourth or even 5th time. And so those are melding meteorites. We have melding meteorites on this side. We have upgrading items on this side, and then on the top we have solving quests. Now, as a default, you can only upgrade items, meld meteorites, and solve quests 4 times each throughout the course of the game. But there is one mech mat that allows you to do each up to 5 times during the game. But for the most part, 4 is the maximum. The only action that I haven't explained yet is boast. And let's see if I can find, the boast actions are on, they are on the different tiles. Let's see if I can, here's one. So this star, as you can see, it goes underneath some corruption. So again, corruption would need to be vanquished before you can use this. But as a gather action, you can boast if this star is exposed, and that lets you place one of your stars on the base camp board here in a criteria that you have completed. And those criteria, or those different criteria, are solving 4 quests, melding 4 meteorites, upgrading 4 items. If you get the 20 value corruption token, which there's only one, it goes on a specific location in the north, you can boast for having vanquished that one. Or if you vanquish 7 individual tokens, so this would only be 2, even though this is a 3 and a 5. This doesn't count as 8. This only counts as 2 because it's the number of tiles that you may have. You can do boast for having vanquished 7 tiles. If you have 8 cards in your control, and that does not include upgraded items, melded meteorites, or solved quests. So those that are either in your hand or in your active row. And then either having 7 workers or 5 of these map tokens. So those are the different criteria that you can boast with. Now, the end of the game will come when either you or the Automa have placed all of their stars. I'll explain in a minute about how Automa place stars. And once somebody has placed their last star, you have 4, Automa has 8. When the last one is placed, you and the Automa each get 1 more turn, regardless of who placed it. So whoever placed the final star will get the final turn as well. And then the game will end after that. So before I get into scoring, let me explain a little bit about how the Automa's turn works. So on the Automa's turn, they have this card here, which indicates, first of all, the level, also indicates when they place their stars, and it also indicates what point values for each of their scoring conditions. They also have this glory card, which when you remove, the first card that I showed you, when that level card tells you to remove a star, you remove it from this card working its way down. So they actually have 8 that they can place, and they just typically just go on the base mat, just removing from this card. In order to do that, if you've ever played an Automa game from Stonemaier before, you know that a lot of times, that most of the time, if not all the time, they use a Automa deck to control the Automa's turn. On the Automa's turn, you draw 1 card, and you just do what it says. So this symbol means you move that marker, that cube, 1 space. And if you move it over a star, then you remove the next star and put it on base camp. Otherwise, it just kind of moves down that track. And then you do what it says. So the top section relates to the mech that is in the north. The bottom section relates to the mech that is in the central level. Now, the mech in the north will always move left to right in the north. It'll never go further south. The mech in the central will always move right to left in the central area. It'll never go north. It'll never go south. Essentially, you have two mechs rather, functioning as one Automa. And when they do, they'll do different things. They may just move and do nothing else, which would just be blocking your spaces. Or you'll see here that there is a star criteria. If they have placed a certain number of stars, they'll do something else besides just move. So in this case, in the north, if they've placed at least 3 stars, they're going to explore, which means unlike the human player, the Automa might move without taking the map token and without flipping over the location, unless this is here. If they meet this criteria, they will indeed move to basically the next location that they can uncover, and they will take this map token, keep it with their mech stuff, and then they will flip this, and we place, and there's the 20 right there. That's where we would place the 20 value corruption token. And so that's how they expose things, but only when that symbol comes up. When this symbol comes up, this means if they have this number of stars, in this case 4, they're going to take 2 tiles that are available to them at one location. And so that's what they're going to be trying to do, is get map tokens, get corruption tokens, and move around the board in order to get those. So one of the strategies I found is it's really helpful if I can collect more of those map tokens and collect more of those corruption tokens rather than letting the Automa get them, because that's how they score points. So we're going to be playing like that, my turn, and then 1 card for the Automa's turn. And you can see this one moves the cube. This next card does not. Oh, I should mention this little broom means sweeping cards. So they take the Automa takes all of the cards that are adjacent to their location before they move, and they put them into a discard pile. So these cards would go away. New cards would come out. Again, only the ones adjacent to where the Automa is. And then we keep going like that until either I've placed all 4 of my glory tokens, or the Automa has placed all 8 of theirs. And then again, we take 1 more turn and we score. For me as the human player, I score, there's a little handy-dandy chart on the base camp that shows how I score. Any coins I've collected is kind of my base score, because coins are points. And then I have a multiplier. For every one of my stars that I've placed on the base camp here, I will count that for this number of coins in this column, depending on how many quests I've solved. So again, if I've solved 3 or more quests, each of these stars is worth 10 points. So this would be 40 points altogether. If I haven't solved any quests, they're only 5. So it would be 20 points instead of 40. Then I also get points for items that I've upgraded. Each one of them has a little item card has an amount down there. I get points for those. And then I get 2 points for every corruption token I get, including the 20 value corruption token. I get 2 points for that. The Automa scores a little bit differently. The Automa scores first by its number of map tokens. So unlike the human player, the Automa scores a certain number of points for map tokens it's collected. It also scores points for corruption tokens, and then scores for glory stars that it has placed as well. And this varies depending on the level. This is a level 3 Automa. There's also, you can see here, level 1, which has a longer track for it to go down and slightly less value for corruption and glory. Level 2 is a little bit harder. Level 3 is harder still. Level 4, and then level 5. I can't imagine anybody being able to beat level 5. This just seems insane. I've actually played this game solo a few times now. I've won on level 2 a number of times. I've come really close on level 3. I think I'm going to beat level 3 pretty soon, but I haven't quite done it yet. Level 5 just seems impossible. So at the end of the game, you total up your points. If you have more points than the Automa, you win. And if you don't, try again next time. So that was an overview of how to play Expeditions, the newest game from Stonemaier Games. So what do I think about it? Well, I'll just, instead of burying the lead, I'll just let you know I love this game. I think this is a fantastic game. It takes place in a world and with a theme that I really love, that I really find engrossing. As with all Stonemaier games, it has quality components. The artwork is incredible, but these metal mechs, these are just so cool and so intricate. I'm not a miniature painter. I don't do painting, and so I like the way these metal ones look, just raw and unpainted. And so I should say that I have the Ironclad edition, which, as far as I believe, the only difference are these mechs and the bases, the colored bases that they snap into. That the basic game, the regular game that isn't the Ironclad edition, has plastic mechs with like snap bases, and these are metal mechs that have silicone bases. And I believe that's the only difference in that. But regardless, this is a really good game. Now, before I get to all of the things I like, I want to mention a couple of things that I don't really like. There are a couple of minor things and then one kind of big thing that really bugs me, and I'm going to have to figure out how to adjust to that. So the little things. First of all, these map tokens. So you're going around the board, you're uncovering spots, you're exploring in the world, and you're collecting these map tokens. There are some uses for these map tokens in the game. So it's an either or for one of the glory components to get 5 map tokens. Now, I have found that especially in low player count games, a 1, 2, or 3 player game, these are not hard to come by. You can get these pretty easily. So getting that glory category of 5 is not that hard. There's also a mech faction that allows you to kind of spend these. You can either trade these in, trash these for either a coin, a strength, or a guile. That's actually very beneficial. So if you have that mech faction, these are much better. Otherwise, they don't really have much use. They don't have much value. They can't really do much. There's also a location in the north where it gives you one of these. And there's another benefit. I can't remember if it's a boast or maybe an upgrade that you can do, but that's initially is covered by corruption. So if you uncover that action, until you've vanquished all that corruption, all it's doing is giving you 1 map token. Now again, for that one mech faction that can use these map tokens, that can be great. That can be a good location to get. Or it can be good. Let me say that. Great may be overstating it a bit. Even for that particular mech, it may be overstating it to say that location is great. Because again, you can only trash it for 1 strength or 1 guile or 1 coin. You may need that, and that may be a good thing to do, but there are plenty of other ways to get those things as well. And so these map tokens really feel like there needs to be something else done with them. I feel like an expansion or something else needs to be done with these. The other thing that I kind of don't like, honestly, I love the metal mechs. These silicone bases, I guess they do stay on. I'm not going to say they don't stay on. They do, but they don't feel like they fit all that great. And so it's a little thing. This is probably the most minor of complaints. But they just, it feels like I need something else to make them a little bit more secure in that base. Okay, so those are kind of the little things that I don't like. There are a few other things, like some of the tile placement, because it's random. Sometimes that can change how the game goes. That can be a plus or a minus. And some of the cards feel like they're better or worse than others. But I mean, that's the case with any game, right? That some cards are just going to feel better to get and to play and to use. Now, here's the thing that really bugs me, that I'm having a hard time dealing with. And it is the size of this box. This box is huge. Well, I mean, there are plenty of games that have larger boxes, don't get me wrong. But this is bigger than the base box that Scythe comes in, which for a long time, I really felt like that was going to be the largest size box, other than like the Wingspan nesting box and the other big boxes, the Scythe legendary box, the big boxes that everything would fit into. Other than those, this is the largest base game box, I believe, that Stonemaier makes. And honestly, it's too big. It's just too big. I don't like the way it fits on my shelf. I like to stack my games on the side so that you can see the name written out horizontally when it's stacked like this. This is how I prefer to store my games. This game can't store like that. It's just too tall. Now, Jamie has said that the box has to be this size, that if it were any smaller, they would have to make the insert smaller and the insert is there to accommodate the mechs, to protect the mechs, and to protect all of the components. They wanted a really good insert, and they achieved it. It is a good insert, well, with one small complaint about that, which I'll get to in a second. But it is, I believe Jamie when he says that the box is as big as it needs to be and no bigger. It's really hard to fit this on my shelf. And I like having a neat shelf. I don't know how well you can see, but my gaming shelves over there, I like the way that they look neatly placed on the shelves. And this one just doesn't fit very well. I have to lay it, horizontally like this on its back, and I don't like storing my games like that. Some of you may be watching this going, get over it. It's not that big of a deal. You're right. It's one of those little niggly things, but mentally, I'm just having a hard time getting past that. I mentioned the insert. It is a really good insert. I find the lid gets stuck easily. Like sometimes it's hard to actually take the lid off. Now there are two finger holes that make it a little bit easier, but I haven't figured out a good way to get the lid off without taking the entire insert out of the box. So maybe I'll figure that out in time, but I think those are really all of my complaints. Everything else I love about this game. There is exploration. There is, I don't know if vanquishing the corruption would be counted as combat, but there's a little bit of tension with that. In a multiplayer game, but also in the solo game with the Automa, there's always this chance that you're going to get blocked. You're not going to be able to go to the space that you need, that the card that you're going to want to get is going to be wiped out or taken by somebody else. There are so many different paths to victory. There are so many different strategies that you can employ. I do think that it might turn out that there are some strategies stronger than others. Now, lately I've been playing a strategy where I go very heavy on melding meteorites. I want to get 4 meteorites melded before the end of the game. And because you melding meteorites, that gets you money, which money is points. Every time you do that, you're also, when you meld the meteorites, that makes your other meteorite cards more powerful when you play them. And so there's a lot of different things that go really well with that strategy. Over time, is that going to be the strategy that I decide to stick with? Maybe, maybe not. We'll see. But for right now, I've found that to be a really good and fun strategy that I'm exploring. The character and companion cards they're similar from one set to the next, but there are enough differences to keep that interesting as well. The mechs with the different mech abilities, the mech mats have an ability down here that is different on each one, and they really feel fun and interesting to use that ability. Now, again, I'm not sure that they're all necessarily as good. So, for instance, there's one that lets you, so usually you're limited to meld only up to four meteorites, upgrade up to 4 items, and solve up to 4 quests. Well, there's a mech ability that allows you to do up to 5 of each one of those. That sounds interesting, that sounds cool, but it will only help you towards the end of the game. You get no benefit from that mech mat at the beginning of the game or even in the middle of the game. And I actually have yet to play a game where I've done all 4 of any 2 of those. So I usually, like I said, I usually go for the meteorites, but I've never, well, sometimes I might have 4 meteorites and 4 quests. I don't know that I would necessarily be able to get 5 of either one of those. Maybe I would as I get better. Maybe that's a more advanced mat that can really pay off for more advanced players. I don't know. But right now, that doesn't feel like something that I necessarily feel particularly drawn to. But the gameplay is fun. It moves fast. Even a long game doesn't feel like it's necessarily taking that long. It doesn't overstay its welcome. A lot like Scythe, when the end game comes, it kind of feels like, oh, if I just had 1 more turn or 2 more turns, then I'd really be able to do something amazing. And I like that in a game. I like that it ends just before you really want it to, because that kind of helps you feel like it just keeps you on the edge of your seat for longer. It doesn't take too long. I've played it multiplayer now. I've played it solo a number of times. I love both. I definitely am going to keep coming back to this solo. Where does this fit in terms of ranking it? I don't know. I mean, that's not something I'm ready to say yet. I definitely think that this is arguably my favorite Stonemaier game in quite some time. The last few have been good. I particularly love Red Rising. Do I like this more than Red Rising? Maybe. I'm not sure yet, but possibly. So we'll see where that falls out. I think that's all I have to say. I really like this game. I think that if you liked Scythe, you might like this. If you didn't like Scythe, you might also like it or not. But I encourage you to share your comments with me. Let me know what you think, and we'll see you next time. And until then, I'll be making my way to the factory as the champion faction. Bye.